Hey everybody, just want to welcome you to what I consider my favorite lesson of the year, Jesus, resurrected or not. What is at stake? Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15:14 that if Christ has not been raised, our preaching is useless, and so is your faith. Like all us Christians, everybody who claims his name, we would just be wasting our time if Jesus didn't rise from the dead. We can't emphasize that enough. C.S. Lewis, former atheist, later Christian scholar, wrote, "Christianity, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important." You can't just say, that's all right, that's cool, and then kind of just go about your way like, no, that's not what this is about. What did the resurrection mean biblically? It meant that people already dead would return to life, would be given new bodies that resembled the ones they had before. So if you look in the Bible and you see some of the resurrection accounts, Jesus, it wasn't like just some spirit. He had a new physical body. Thomas was a doubter. He was like, hey, I won't believe unless I can put my fingers in the holes of his hands or his wrists or in his side. He was able to eat with the disciples in these times. But these bodies resembled the ones they had before. Why is this important? Let's really figure out, what can it mean practically? 1 Thessalonians 4:13 says, we don't mourn as those without hope. There's a difference between grieving with or without hope. There's a sense of funerals being a good night, see you in the morning. It shows that God really cares for us. We will spend much more time with him in eternity than now. Now is a proving ground where our character will be shaped and improved. I don't know if some of you have seen that Francis Chan sermon. He has this very long rope that just comes across the stage of this former church. And the very end, he painted it. It has like maybe red or black paint on the end. The whole rest of it, maybe 20, 30 feet, is just not colored. And he just points out how this very small, maybe an inch of that rope represents our lives on this earth. The whole rest of the rope represents eternity. What we do now is going to impact forever. And God really cares for us. He wants to help us now and in the future. It's not an either or. Another point that as to why this is important is Jesus will heal us in every way. Spiritually, physically, psychologically. He loves us. He's our good, good Father. God can give you the power to love your enemies. Not just be nice to people, but truly love your enemies. And to not fear death, sin, the future, etc. I think there's a lot of you out there, we're all there's questions about the future. It's April 2020, so I think you all know what I'm talking about. We can access the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead. Another point we can make is that it was the great turning point in human history. We can bring about, by God's Spirit, his kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. We live in a world that fools itself into thinking that the Enlightenment, not the Buddhist Enlightenment, but the Age of Reason, was the turning point in human history. But if that's the case, how was the 20th century, how did it have more murders or killing in it than all the previous 19 centuries combined. My argument is that the resurrection is the turning point in human history. And lastly, why is it important? Because it's just true. He came in history. His story, his actions include verifiable evidence, and I'm going to talk about that today. Let's go into some background information. Any questions at this point? Most scholars think that 1 Corinthians, even as just a historical document, I believe that the Bible is God's word. Not everyone looks at it like that, but if we were to say it was just a historical document, which is what some scholars do, it doesn't really matter your background. People who study the Bible, even like people like the Jesus Seminar, I'm going to go into more, full of atheists, agnostics, they agree that the book of 1 Corinthians was written between 55 and 65 AD, about 30 years after Jesus' life. Significance. Obviously, the further away from historical events, the more people tend to disbelieve of those events. So, an example is Alexander the Great. I don't hear a lot of people, when they mention Alexander the Great, question what happened in his lifetime. But did you know that he lived between 356 and 323 BC, but the biography about his life was about 400 years later. People don't question his life, or at least we don't hear about it. We don't talk about it in common everyday talk. Why not? And then we have documents about Jesus' life within 30 years. I've also been talking to you about the life of the Buddha and other historical religious figures. And the Buddha died roughly the 5th or the end of the 4th century BCE. There's debates about that. But we don't have the first biography of the Buddha's life until the Buddha Karita, this poem. And it was like roughly 500 years later. And that's arguably that's one reason why I argue that's why Mahayana Buddhism emerged. Because enough of the eyewitnesses died off, and then I would say legend developed, and that's when people started to worship the Buddha. Because he never said to worship him. But anyways, if you don't believe in miracles, it means your bias can automatically exclude some potential evidence. So many people try to say that they're just trying to follow science. They're trying to be good scientists. They're trying to look at the evidence. All right? Well, if you exclude miracles from the onset, how is that looking at all the available evidence? I'm just trying to, help us. David Hume is known for saying that there are no such things as miracles. He said it's because of the uniformity of nature. Everyone just sees things, it's just uniform, it's the same all across the board. But I just sent a whole list of like almost 10 books to a student today asking about modern day miracles, and I can provide you with the same if you're interested. Just let me know in a comment. Take a moment.